teachers come into special education, you're probably already motivated if this is the field that you have chosen, because you know that you're going to meet with some resistance from your students. So you're already kind of motivated in that respect. So my job is to give it to you so that you understand it completely, because I feel like if you understand it and I give you the tools that you need, that you are going to be motivated. The other thing is to show you how to use those tools, and if you use those tools with the students, you're going to get progress. And what's more motivating than progress?
Progress at the end of what you've been teaching students. Right. So, being in your position, how do you work with all stakeholders and identify instructional and curricular needs that align with the district's shared vision? Our shared vision here in Talladega County, how do you do that or implement that?
That's interesting, because that probably, this is my second go-round in a district-wide position, and that probably is something that changed the most after my stint as being assistant principal, because that gave me a different perspective. It made it easier for me to work with principals and assistant principals because I knew where they were coming from. Before, I would just say, hey, we got to do this, just figure it out, just figure it out. And now I can more see where their perspective is. So I think you have to look at everybody's perspective. Look, how can we take our area of special ed and help you so that you in turn can help us, so that we all collaborate together. And the way we do that is through discussions. We have data meetings. Special ed has data meetings monthly with their principals. I'll try to attend as many of those as I can in all of my schools. And that, to me, is the best way, because principals can share with us what their expectation is. I can share what my expectation is. You guys can share where we are in the data, and we work together to try to get to that shared vision.
So the next question probably goes along with what you just said about monitoring and assessing instructional programs and activities. So can you relate that to the data and the data meetings, and how are you monitoring and assessing it? Because you don't work directly in a school, so you have to go out into the schools. So how are you monitoring and assessing what we as teachers do in different schools?
It's in the data meetings, and that's probably the best thing we've done. We started last year trying to teach people what our expectations were in data meetings, what a data meeting looks like. It's still a work in progress, because with special ed we have so much data that we look at. So which data are we supposed to be paying attention to? Well, all of it. But, I think this year we've started our STAR 360 in our high schools. Elementaries have already been using it, but we're starting that now in our high schools. Well, what is STAR 360? What are we measuring? I've had some schools that were shocked that students that were on grade level with previous assessments are showing up in need of intervention on STAR 360. But the difference is that our special education assessment pieces are measuring students where they are on their own grade level, whereas the STAR 360 is measuring them based on what their actual grade level is, not their instructional grade level. So we have to figure out how to balance the two, and to see if what we're doing is increasing that STAR 360 as well as increasing just on that curriculum-based assessment.
So you mentioned STAR 360. So go a little bit into diagnostic tools, and what else do we have that we can use in the county for diagnostic tools? I know you mentioned STAR 360, and I know you're the one that goes to the professional development, and you come back and teach those diagnostic tools to us. So elaborate a little bit on those.
Well, we were using Global Scholar, and we just kind of went to STAR 360 because we felt like we wanted to be doing a universal type progress monitoring that fit best with our curriculum standards. So we started with the STAR 360, but that is by far not the only diagnostic tool we use. We use tools for transition. Some of our diagnostic tools for transition could be the Cooter assessment. We have a reading-free assessment that we use for students who don't read or can't make any meaning from the Cooter, having it read to them. And we also have assessments from our reading areas. We have programs that are they're curriculum-based assessments, like our SRA. We have Spire, which is relatively new for us. We just started using it last year, and it's a multisensory reading program. One area that we're struggling in right now is finding a research-based math program to use with our students. Our teachers are begging for something, and we're looking at different programs, but we're having difficulty finding one that matches up with what our expectations are in the system. They tend to work just on skills and not on teaching kids how to think.
Right, and I do feel comfortable with the reading strategies that we've been putting in place and that we've used in the different programs here that we've used in Southern County. But like you said, math is a struggle for a lot of teachers and, for a lot of students to be able to have a program that really gets that across to the students. So I think that is important that we do have something in place as, in the classroom for the students.
Are you on Amsty School?
No.
See, that would be something that I would think would be great to get started here, because Amsty has so many strategies that they teach that are research-based strategies for math. That would be something that I've seen done in some of the schools, especially even elementary schools are using Amsty, like Lincoln Elementary is using it. And I've seen great strategies that the special ed teachers have been able to borrow from general ed that they've learned through Amsty. But we're still searching for that program. Special educators, we all want a program.
Oh, yeah, we do. What's one of your greatest difficulties in your position?
Oh, having enough time.
And I think that's a big thing with all the teachers. And when I do ask teachers that question, it's like time. We don't have the time to really plan out things. And one of the things that we have talked about on yesterday was having learning supports. And to be able to have learning supports, you have to manage that time and be able to find time to meet with all the people in your learning support group to plan out things for your students. So it's just time. We have to make time sometime before school and sometime after school, whether we want to or not, to be successful in our area. So you are so right. Time is a big problem that we have as educators.
One thing we're considering, we don't get to pull all of our special education teachers together a lot. Most of the time, if we have a training on a school day, we'll take half of you guys at one time and another half on another day, so we don't pull all of our special educators out of the building at one time. But then we worry that, did that group hear everything that this group heard? Because you know how you're training, sometimes you go more in-depth based on what they heard. So what we've been thinking of doing is possibly doing some Google Hangout training so that everybody doesn't have to leave their building, and maybe do some, using that or Skype or some things like that to help us better utilize our time and our funding. I think it costs us something like $8,000 every time we have a training and have to pay subs for all our special ed teachers. So if we could do it that way, that might be more beneficial to us.
Going back to technology, you mentioned Skype. So I know that we have been talking about and researching in some of my classes that Knowledge Center curriculum is more like a preparatory school where they really going toward the core classes and preparing students for college. So here in the county, I do feel like we use more of a learner center and a society center learner. So talk a little bit about the learning center curriculum and society center curriculum. I know we use a lot of, we incorporate the society center with transition with our students. And I've taken students out on various job trainings and community-based work experience. So how do you feel about that and PBL? That's the way the county is moving toward. So do you think that's a good curriculum to have for us?
I'm thrilled with what we're doing in the county with PBL. The fact that every child in Talladega County has their own device as of January of this year is awesome. It is fabulous. I go into elementary classrooms and I see children, 2nd and 3rd grade, that are able to manipulate a device, that are able to do things their parents don't even know. I hear parents saying, my child knows how to open up programs, attach documents, email, and they're in 2nd grade. We are preparing our children in Talladega County for the 21st century. I do feel like we are moving from a knowledge base to a student-centered learning and society-centered learning, because we are listening to what society is telling us, that our students are not prepared for the workplace. They are prepared to regurgitate facts. They're not prepared to think on their own and to collaborate. Absolutely. So I do believe we are moving toward a student-centered learning, working together. I love transition. That is my heart, and I know that's been your heart for a long time too. You did such a good job at Lincoln as the transition coordinator. We have had to, we've kind of, focus has gotten away from transition, and we have begun bringing it back this year, asking teachers to develop school-based, community-based, and to go on out in the communities, help the kids expand from community-based into that society.
Right. And those were some good points. Transition did kind of fall off at one time, but I still felt as an individual and as an educator that I need to continue to push that forward for the students, because I knew that they needed that. And they needed that real world connection with employers. So I was glad that I didn't ever step back off of transition. So I'm glad that now, it's more.
I think you and I had that conversation a while back about what's happening with transition.
We have.
And I told you then, I said, just wait, it's coming.
I was even hurt at one time. I was even to the point about to cry because transition, nobody seemed like they was caring about transition but me. But
that's right.
So he was like, hey, wait, it's going to come back.
It's coming back, because I was hearing it from the State Department. So I knew we were going to go back in that direction. And we have. I've got schools in the county that have gone out and developed partnerships. And I talked to them a lot about what you've done with Shaco Springs, where they have had great partnership with you for years. And you've been taking our kids there, and they love working with our kids and teaching them so many things. But we now have teachers that are taking kids out to Farm Links golf course, and we've got kids that are getting jobs in grocery stores. We even have some AAA kids that have gotten jobs in grocery stores because of what they did in cooperative education and community-based learning prior to that.
And I do want to ask you this also. You had mentioned earlier in the year that a lot of like the special ed kid students, the ones that are maybe severe profound, as far as going to group homes and work centers, they're kind of getting away from that. How is that working out? I mean, I hadn't really seen much of that. Is that really happening for them to be placed in a working environment like Home Depot or Walmart or Wendy's? Is that happening? Are they really not going to work centers anymore? How's the real world and the employers and the business people really handling that? Have you seen much of that?
I will say that we, in our world, in Talladega County, we have not seen very many people that are open to allowing a child that is cognitively delayed, as a AAA child typically is, that they're really concerned about liability.
Students also, I'd like to announce that we will be having our Stop the Violence rally on tomorrow. Students, if you pay $1, you'll be able to wear jeans on tomorrow. Once again, that money is to help with the prizes for the Stop the Violence rally. So please, students, make sure you're in best behavior in order to attend. Seniors, you may wear your senior shirt on tomorrow, but please make sure that you pay your $1 for your jeans. Thank you, and let's continue to have a great day.
I'm just a little bit ADD myself, so I'd have a hard time focusing with that. But we are having difficulty in that area. We know that there's the typical work after high school work. What are we talking about? The work, sheltered workshops. That's what I'm trying to say. The funding for those typically had come through mental health, and mental health budgets are being cut. Places like the ARC and places like the Opportunity Centers around us, funding is being cut, and they're telling us that they're wanting us to prepare students to go out into the workforce. Well, we're having a hard time convincing employers because of the liability. So we've got to get to the point where we can start, and I will say, although we haven't had very much success, I've noticed up in the Oxford area that there are, when I shop at Sam's, I see students that are obviously special education students. Like, I know when I see them, that child is a special ed student. But they are greeting at Sam's, they are gathering the buggies, So I'm thinking, okay, so some school systems been able